Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, the purpose of this podcast is to build a world with better bosses, and we do that by learning from the greatest minds in leadership today. Whether you're new to leadership or a seasoned pro, you'll get practical insights to help you lead with confidence. Today's episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, Cadre of Men, and Vero Skincare. Check out the show notes for links to my sponsors and all of my books. Today, we're talking about how to move from surviving to thriving as a leader, and my guest is Dr. Renee Moorefield. Renee helps us understand the most common areas where leaders fall short of thriving and how a science based approach can help them get back on track. Now, if you feel like you're in survival mode as a leader, you need to listen to this thoughtful conversation. Now, I love Renee's insights, and I know you will as well. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Renee Moorefield. Renee is a visionary leader and innovator in the field of human-centered leadership. She is CEO and co-founder of Wisdom Works Group, a company that focuses on developing thriving leaders. Her company has worked with many Fortune 500 companies such as Coca-Cola, Barilla, Roche, Booz Allen, Google, Nike, Hyatt, and others, and they use a science-based platform called Be Well, Lead Well to help certify and nurture change leaders in every region of the world. And I'm excited to have her on the show to talk about the idea of thriving leadership. So, Renee, welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me. It's terrific.
Well, it is a pleasure to meet you, and I'm excited to talk about this topic of thriving leader and thriving leadership. So, first of all, break it down for us. How would you define a thriving leader?
Yeah, it's like seems like a simple question, but it's a challenging one as well. You think about all the things that leaders do, from providing direction and creating meaning to focus and execution to engaging people in commitments. When we define thriving leadership, we say thriving leadership is about stewarding the conditions where all people can thrive, where you're really harnessing the potential and the best energies and decisions of people. So, and you're doing it in a context where you want to contribute to a healthier organization and a thriving planet. So it's really going beyond just you yourself, but looking at how can I show up in ways that really support others to thrive at work and at home, and in a way that together we can contribute to something really special that we can't by ourselves.
So that makes a lot of sense. So a thriving leader is going to create a thriving environment. It sounds like for their employees, and also you said even in your home life, right? Is that what you're?
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Correct. It's funny because I've been doing this work for now 35-ish years, a very long time. And I remember when I started doing the work, you could talk about leadership effectiveness, but to move toward well-being or thriving, that was really a stretch. But you could do that still in the context of leadership. But often leaders weren't like they are now more and more looking at how we show up as a leader is often how we show up at home as well. And how people show up at home, what's going on in their home, the stresses, the joys, whatever's happening at home is also brought into work. So we're
Hmm.
realizing now that when we create healthy organizations, we're really looking at whole people. And as a leader, we need to have the capacity to think in that way, think in terms of whole people are coming and giving their life energy to this
Yeah.
job. How do we harness that? How do we support them in showing up well?
Yeah. And thriving has the connotation of like it's sort of not just surviving, right? So surviving, we were talked about before we press record, the pandemic, right? Many of us were just trying to survive through the pandemic, especially as small business leaders like I am. But some people actually thrive. Some companies thrive during the pandemic, and so it means it's more than resilience. It sounds like it's you actually succeed when things get difficult. Is that what you imply when you use the word thrive?
Absolutely. So, a couple things that you said, there's like three different directions I could go with what you just said. But the first thing I'll say is when we talk about thriving itself, a simple definition is how internally, that your listener can even ask themselves right now, how internally well resourced do I feel, or are we as a team, do we feel to meet our complexities and demands, because we all have complexities and demands, right? To meet those with a high quality of life, with a sense of competence, and with growth. So it's not just about surviving those complexities and demands, as you mentioned, that often many people did during COVID, many of us did during COVID. It's how can we meet those with vitality, with competence, and with a growth mindset, knowing that through challenge, we grow, we can grow as human beings. A great example of that is during COVID, we worked with an executive. Her name is Julia Schworer at Barilla. So you mentioned Barilla being one of our clients. We've worked with them for a number of years. She is the head of their bakery division. So Barilla's got, in the US, we know Barilla as a pasta company. So they've got
Right.
the pasta division. And then we know the pesto, they've got the pesto division. But in many other places around the world, particularly Europe, they have a bakery division. And it's really some of their beloved brands like Molina Bianco. The brand team Molina Bianco, Julia could see during COVID, was suffering. The team, like a lot of teams, engagement was eroding. The team members were now not seeing each other at work. They were all now working from home. Barilla exists in Parma, Italy. That's the founding of Barilla, and Parma was the epicenter of the COVID virus in Europe. So I mean,
Mm.
it was intense in Parma. Everyone was at home. She had older leaders that were actually doing okay because they had a lot of life experience that told them, okay, this too shall pass at some point. But she had a lot of young people on the
Mm.
team. And these younger leaders didn't have that experience and now were just out of college, figuring out their career and now isolated.
Mm.
So it was a really difficult situation. She asked us to come work with her to help the team reinvent the team. And we actually did 3 levels of work. We helped them individually look at what they could do to thrive in the middle of the pandemic. Second, we worked on the team. How did the team want to show up together? What routines and practices could they put in place so that they performed well as a team and really grew their resilience as a team? And then third, they because they were a brand team, they realized their brand could support the well-being and resilience of consumers during such a difficult time. And all of their numbers, and your listeners can access the case study on it, all the numbers showed in the middle of a pandemic, over the course of 9 months, they boosted their job autonomy scores, their participative work culture scores, their well-being scores, how they were eating, how they were moving, how they were resting, how they were breathing, their engagement at work scores. Every score we measured improved at the same time that engagement and well-being for employees was eroding around the world. So it's not just about surviving. We have within us, we are biologically hardwired with circuits for survival and for dealing with stress. We are also biologically hardwired with circuits for thriving. And yet
Mm.
we've often not designed our lives or our workplaces to bring those forward as resources for
Yeah.
our life and our leadership. So yeah, so there's some great, so this is not about survival. It really is
Yeah.
how to thrive.
Yeah, I love that. So it's more than just resilience. It's actually, having a growth mindset in the midst of chaos, right? In the midst of maybe the biggest trials your company's ever faced. It's like, okay, well, what good can come out of this, and how can how can we grow during this? How can we improve? And I love to hear that. And I would say, I think that's a mark of a great leader that can create a positive environment, within the company when everything seems to be going crazy outside the company. And I think that says something about the kind of workplace, that you want to work for, is a place that figures out how to do better even when the storms come.
Well, and you're bringing up something else about this element of thriving, or sometimes it's called well-being. We like the word thriving because it feels a little bit larger than just focusing on our mental and emotional health
Mm.
and well-being. It really is about also this experience of using challenge for growth. for really
Mm.
growing and evolving ourselves individually and together. So many companies are realizing that a focus on this can actually be a differentiator to attract the people that they want to attract into the company, to retain the people they want to retain, and to develop people. And so I think we are finally, again, after 35 years of doing this kind of work, I actually think COVID, for all of the suffering that it caused and the ripple effects of that suffering, we're still feeling the ripple effects of that suffering. It also caused people, organizations, leaders, individuals to go, why am I here? How
Yeah.
do I want to use my life energy?
Yeah.
What's my purpose? How do I want to be with other people? And it's really caused a new level of focus on what it means to be human at work, again, both individually, but also together. There's so much that we can accomplish together that we absolutely cannot accomplish alone. And given the complexities of our world today and the acceleration of AI, the political divisiveness that we experience all over the world, not just the US, all over the world, we need each other. We need each other to sort all this out. So why not work in ways that enable each other to thrive so that we come at these challenges with greater wisdom? And that's the other thing I would say. When we are in a place, just in personally, but definitely collectively as well, where we feel this internal sense of self-regulation rather than dysregulation and stress, when we are more creative, when we feel self-regulated, we are more expansive, we are more open to others' points of view, we are more innovative, we are more productive. So there's no reason not to
Yeah.
prioritize our capacity to thrive.
Yeah, I love that. I do think that you're right. I think that we can do so much more when we're not in a panic mode or we're feeling, you know, overwhelmed by events. We can do so much more, right? And then I like what you said too, in terms of the pandemic sort of reset things a bit in the workplace. I think there was maybe a shift now where we're seeing the concerns of employees a lot more. It plays a more prevalent role because again, employees are like, if I don't like working here, I'm going to leave, and because my life is short, anything can happen, and so I want to go where I feel like I belong and I feel like I'm doing my life's work. And so I think the challenge is to leaders is that we have to create environments where people want to come and be part of our big vision for the world, right? And become part of something that's bigger than ourselves, right? And I think they want to come to places like that. So the onus is on leaders now to create those environments where maybe in the past it was like, look, I'm giving you a job, you're going to get a
Right.
paycheck. You know, it's like, no, I want more than that. People want more than that, for me as a leader, I love that. You know, I think it's a good thing.
I do too. And I think it's a real shift that we've seen over this
Yeah,
last, few years, but it's been happening over time where some of the best workplaces are places where you leave work and you've grown as a human being, you've gained personal and professional skills, you actually have gained capacities that you did not have when you came in.
yeah,
And so organizations that intentionally design themselves to be that way, I think those will be really the winners.
yeah, yeah,
Because that kind of environment leads to more sustainable performance too.
yeah,
The
yeah,
same kind of environment that's good performance ends up being good for people.
yeah.
So yeah, I love the shifts that are happening right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's fascinating to watch for sure. Especially after being in leadership for so long, it's kind of interesting to watch these things happen. But so let's go back. I mentioned in the introduction you have this platform called Be Well, Lead Well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Be Well, Lead Well was a few years ago our efforts to kind of pull things together under one brand. And so in this platform, there are a whole host of resources to support leaders and sort of up-leveling how they think about thriving for themselves, their own effectiveness, their own lives, but also how they become the kind of leader that stewards those conditions of thriving for others, thriving teams, a thriving organization that you and I were just talking about. So under that platform are programs, bespoke programs that they're learning journeys for individual leaders, like coaching journeys, or journeys for teams, like the brand team that I mentioned to you. So we know it's an organized journey, but it needs to be specific based on the results that that team wants to create. So we always customize it. There is an assessment system. So for the longest time, we were doing this work, but we didn't have, and we use a 360 assessment that we love, which is called the Leadership Circle Profile. It's the universal model of leadership. It's really terrific when it comes to leadership competencies and the reactive tendencies of leaders, and to kind of map out a pathway of growth. But what it didn't include is the leader's life overall. And so we created with the University of Colorado Business School here in Colorado Springs a tool that looks at 19 bio, psycho, social, spiritual, so very holistic factors linked to leadership and your life overall. And so those are factors like how you eat, how you move, how you breathe. Are you using your breath to help you
Yeah.
regulate your stress, your energy, your performance, your sense of wonder and awe, your mindfulness, do you have a vision and purpose to guide your life and work? So there's 19. I won't go through all 19,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we see such a high correlation between a high link between a leader's well-being and their impact. In fact, one study that we did just at the end of last year, 2023, showed that a leader's impact, 34% of their impact could be explained by their own well-being. So your well-being is that significant because it really is the state of being from which you're showing up to do.
Mm.
So under Be Well, Lead Well is that assessment. We have a database of close to 4,000 leaders now that have taken the assessment. So we're able to look around the world at differences from small companies to large companies, to different ethnicities, to gender orientation, to education level, et cetera, to look at how leaders are scoring on this assessment tool. And we're able to contribute insights from that to really to advance the field of thriving leadership. So those are some of the resources. We also have a newsletter that we send out once a month just to help people with tips and tools and other things they can do to support themselves.
So a leader, that gets involved with this will go through this assessment. What do they learn about themselves, and what are the things, what are the kind of the aha moments that they have when they go through some of this? Do you have any maybe stories or examples of some of the things that leaders find when they go through this holistic assessment?
Yeah, I can give you from the all the leaders we've worked with, one of the biggest, well, first, two things first. One is that for most leaders, they haven't slowed down long enough to look at their thriving overall, the thriving and resilience. So that's the first. So it is stunning
Yeah.
the pace that we're all going, that to take that moment to pause and to have a structured approach based in science that you can lean into that allows you to look holistically at your life and work and your leadership ends up being a rare thing for a lot of leaders. And so to do that ends up being it kind of stops leaders in their tracks. So I think that's been a good thing. The holistic nature of the assessment also surprises leaders. They're used to, when they think of it as a well-being tool, they think, oh, well, you're going to ask me about exercise and how I eat, but they don't realize that their sense of awe, their
Mm.
sense of awe that they experience every day is highly correlated to their well-being and their leadership. Their vision and purpose to guide their life and work is critical, not their organization's vision, not their team's vision, but a self-directed sense of purpose is really, really critical to guide their life and work. So there's factors that I think really surprise leaders. A colleague and I worked yesterday with a group of 8 executives. So we did a session for them this morning. They had yesterday morning, taken the assessment and we were debriefing their results with them. And one of the things that came out of that debrief that I hear so much. And not only do I hear, I know because it's my own growing edge as well, is we have one factor called emotional capacity. And
Mm,
that factor really is measuring the extent to which a person feels um, responsible for, for getting things done, for getting results in life and work, the extent to which they can bring a sense of equanimity, internal balance, and lightness to those responsibilities.
mm,
Because you can hold the same responsibilities to get results with a sense of burden and heaviness, or you can hold those same responsibilities with a sense of lightness and joy and, and enjoyment. So it's interesting. That shift makes all the difference to how you get the results, how you feel about the results you get.
mm.
But often we find leaders scoring really low in that area, and I'm one of them. When I take the assessment, when I took it a number of years ago for myself, I realized this is something I have to work on myself.
Yeah,
I grew up as a child being very responsible kid, always having a sense of kind of purpose, always having a sense of unfairness and inequities kind of in the world, and always feeling like I needed to do something about that, whether that was in the family system or friends or just the world at large. And so this last decade, I've really been focusing on, okay, how can I still have that sense of purpose? It's not about losing your purpose, but do it with lightness, do it
mm,
with more joy and more
yeah,
play. Because my sense is we actually get better results, like I said before, when we feel less stress about those things. We are more creative, we're more innovative, we bring more wisdom to
yeah.
those results. So that is one shift I've seen a lot of leaders working on, including
That
me.
that is a really interesting point. I belong to a group of leaders, and we have discussions. And one of the leaders put a question out there that said, "How do you deal with high stress, when you feel like you have a lot of burdens on you? How do you deal with that?" And people were kind of joining in and saying, that they use meditation and all this different stuff. And one of the things I was thinking is that I actually enjoy those situations. Like, I wonder if I'm one of those light people that, like, I know that I have responsibilities and I know that I have all these stresses on me as a business owner and all, but I love it. Like, I thrive in it. And so I like those high pressure situations. And so I didn't know how to contribute to it because I don't need a time to unpack or unwind from those high stress.
Well,
I
I'd say
enjoy it.
wonderful, wonderful for you that you've had whatever life experience you had. Probably it was something early in your childhood, by the way, because
Yeah.
that's what shapes us, how we're parented, what we're socialized in,
Mm,
that you had some experiences or experiences that helped you realize, oh wow, when I feel burden, I can hold that lightly. I can actually
yeah.
bring humor to it. I can bring play to it. I can really enjoy it. But that's a big shift for a lot of people. That's not
Yeah. That's interesting.
where most people live.
And
Yeah.
I actually felt weird in the conversation because I'm like, I don't feel that pressure. I don't feel the burden. I feel like it's part of like it's the joy of being in leadership. It's like, okay, there's always a challenge that you have to overcome. It's never easy. And I like that about what we do. And so it was very interesting discussion. So you've given me a little bit of like a language to understand a little bit of how I didn't react it the way everybody else was. So I felt a little weird in that conversation. So yeah, interesting, very interesting.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that, and I love the fact that you're making people aware of these issues that may not be aware of. And I think that's one of the beauties of these assessments is that you get a chance to say, oh shoot, I didn't recognize that this is actually a problem, or I didn't recognize there's actually a solution to that. I thought everyone just stressed out when things were bad and difficult, right? So now they're seeing, oh, there's another way to look at this, right?
Totally. There are other mindsets to bring to our demands that enable us to move through those demands and grow through them, evolve through them, rather than get burnt out and exhausted, which
Yeah.
is which is a lot of what a lot of people are doing and teams are doing When you
Mm,
have a whole team that feels demoralized, exhausted, you don't have a team that's going to be performing at their best. So why lead that way? And yet we've gotten into this unconscious um, perception that if we just work longer, if we just work harder, if we just work faster, then that's going to be better. And we've already seen over the decades that that's not true.
mm,
We have to bring a sense of internal resourcefulness to our demands so that we can move through them better. I want to say something to you also about your comment about stress. A lot of people really feel stuck in stress. So, the
mm.
people who are showing up at work um, aren't just dealing with stressors at work. They're dealing with stressors all over their life.
Yeah.
Depending on the generation, they may have children, they may have elder care, they may have financial stressors, they may have an existential stressor, not know exactly why they're here, like they don't have a sense of purpose or meaning. So there's all sorts of things that are weighing people down. And yet even deeper than that, we all can learn how to, like it sounds like you already do, build a healthy relationship to stress so
Mm.
that we see it as life affirming. Like we need stress to really support our growth and development. So, so yeah.
Yeah, I love that to have a healthy relationship with stress. That's a great way to think about it. How do we have a better, and more healthy relationship with stress?
Right. And how
Um,
do we support each other in doing that? How do we
yeah,
create teams where you may have a team member that is like stressed out right now, but we can
mm,
all become more aware of our own signals of when we're getting overstressed
yeah,
and support each other in navigating stress more effectively.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense, and I see it too, just in my business and the people I'm working with. I can sense when an employee feels overwhelmed and their mood changes, and I think one of the things we have to do as leaders is to really know our people so that we can sense when there's something wrong, when there's something, when they're dealing with something, to be able to be there and as a leader to say is how are things going, is there anything I can do to help, what are the issues, are you having some issues, because I sense you're not the same as you normally are, and so being aware of how others are being impacted by various events, right?
And that's only possible to do if you yourself are doing okay too. Like if you have
Yeah,
the capacity to and I'll say this for myself, to get out of our own way, like to get
yeah,
out of our own way so that we can turn our attention not just internally, but turn our attention externally and go, well, how are people, how is my team doing? How are
yeah,
people doing individually? Because this is a group of individuals that I'm asked to come together to produce some result. How are
yeah,
they doing? And then,
yeah,
and then, have I created an environment that really supports trust, pro-social behaviors, collaboration, etc.
yeah.
Yeah,
It makes a lot of sense. I have a good friend of mine, John Brubaker, who said something and always stuck in the back of my mind is that as a leader, we're on stage. And so you're on stage, you're performing, everyone's got eyeballs on you, everyone's watching you. He said, but if you're backstage is a mess. It's if it's chaos backstage, your family, your finances, your health, then you can't be your best when you're on stage.
I
And to
love
your
that.
point, you can't notice what's happening as a leader if you have no capacity. I don't want to deal with your stress right now because I have too much on myself, right? And so if we don't take care of the behind the stage, we're never going to be performing at our best on the stage, right? So it seems like we've got to take care of those things backstage if we want to be great as a leader.
I love the metaphor. That's a great one because you can really visually see the front of the stage and the backstage, what's happening,
Yeah,
all the scurrying that's going on behind the stage to make sure
yeah,
the stage is prepared. It's interesting because from a neuroscience perspective, you can say the same thing, that the idea that whatever is going on with your nervous system, you are radiating to the nervous systems around you.
yes,
People operate most effectively when there is absolutely challenge, not over stress, but when there's challenge, when there is an environment of learning and trust, when people can make mistakes and it's not punitive to do so, but you grow from mistakes. When the leader themselves shows up open, expansive, clear, and with a real self-regulated nervous system. So we know that there's a direct relationship, even now, between you and me. right now. If we are on this Zoom conversation long enough, our breath rates will start to synchronize, our brain waves will start to synchronize. We are influencing each other in ways that we're usually not that aware of when we're working together.
Yeah.
And it's so important for the leader because people are looking to the leader for, okay, how are we going to show up around here? Like what's okay around here? So the leader themselves to be very aware of and authentically aware, not just on that front of the stage, like you mentioned, performing, but then the backstage is a wreck.
Yeah.
To really do what it takes, whether it's working with a coach, whether it's working with a therapist, whether it's talking to a mentor, whatever it is, journaling, meditate, whatever it is. And, our tool maps out different pathways for it, but whatever it is for that leader to really support what needs to be supported on that backstage so
Yeah.
that they can show up internally well-resourced on the stage itself. So
Yeah.
that metaphor is terrific.
Yeah. And everyone's different backstage. Everyone has different issues backstage. So find the appropriate way to work on those issues. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Whatever makes sense. So this is fantastic. Well, this has been a great dialogue. I really appreciate this idea of thriving, and not just surviving, and well-being and all that. I think it's really important to leadership. It's really important to our workforce. So I think it's very relevant today. We live high stress lives. It's a high stress world. So how do we thrive and not just get by every day, right? And so I love this message. So what final message would you like to leave with our listeners at this time?
I think we've talked about everything that's most important, but I guess the one kernel I'd want people to hear is that you already have this innate capacity to thrive. You already
Mm.
have this innate capacity to thrive. It's not something that, for sure, it's something to prioritize and bring forward in your life and work and leadership. But you have you're biologically hardwired with the capacity to thrive. You've been moving into challenge and change your entire life, or you wouldn't be in the position that you are. And so to know that and to be able to just lean into that message for a second and know, oh, wait a minute. Okay, I've got this. I've got this. I'd love for everyone to hear that because I do think we are in such a high stressed time and a lot of uncertainty, anxiety for people. So to be able to really rest in that knowing is important.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great message. You've got this because you've gotten through so much to get to where you're at, right? And you
Totally.
can do this as well. So, but that's a fantastic message. This has been fantastic. Renee, how can people find out more about you and your company and the services you offer?
Well, for our company, wisdom-works.com, or they can email me at Renee, Renee, at wisdom-works.com. And then I'm on LinkedIn, Renee Moorefield.
Okay, very good. We're going to put links and show notes for all of Renee's resources. And again, if something in here resonated with you, if you're thinking, "Wow, I feel like I'm in survival mode and I'm not thriving," and you've got questions, Renee is there. Reach out to her. Reach out to her company. If you're thinking that your workforce is stressed out and you're not sure what to do next, it sounds like to me the Be Well, Lead Well program is going to help you, and this platform and assessment is going to help you try to figure out what it is that's causing you to be stuck and to find ways to unpack that and to be able to handle stress better and be able to thrive instead of just survive. So I highly encourage you to reach out to Renee and explore what she can do to help you. And again, the links are in the show notes below. So click on those links, reach out to Renee. Renee, thank you for coming on the show. This has been a great conversation on a very important topic.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.